Yeah, so like, okay, here you are, all right? You're hitting a 7-iron. And so what is the consequence of having the ball too far back? You're going to leave the ball out to the right because the club doesn't have enough time to close. It's a longer club. So a longer club needs more time to square up. So you just need to think of it like this. The center of your chest is when you set up to the ball, that's where a wedge should be. For your swing, your 7-iron should probably be about a ball forward of center. We're gonna make sure that's right, but certainly that is definitely where it is right there. It's just too far back there. Technically, I mean, you got a great shoulder turn. You know, I love that. What am I looking for? Well, I'm looking for how your lower body moves. You don't have any issues there. I mean, your hips turn nicely. You don't have any lateral movement in your lower body on the backswing. You got a nice turn there. Right in here, you got a little bit of a bending of that lead wrist, and the club releases a little bit early. I don't know if you understand any of that, but what I basically mean is at impact. Right. And so that's something that I'll give you an exercise to do where you take a golf club. I'm going to show you. I'm going to explain it to you. You just take the club, drag it along the ground from about 12 inches behind your right toe to past your left toe. And all I want you to do is keep this relationship. The end of the club and the club head are moving together. And you're just working on turning your body so that the center of your body, the lead upper arm, this arm is up against your chest, and you're just keeping a flat left wrist. Now, the reason that that left wrist is bending is you're losing a little bit of the angle early. Why? Because your swing is a little bit, your downswing, you start to use your hands a little bit earlier than you should. Now, is that a bad thing? No. Jack Nicklaus didn't have a lot of lag in his swing, and neither did Tom Watson. They did pretty well. But this lead wrist bending is what's causing inconsistencies in contact, thin shots, and also you do have a nice straight left arm, which is great. Sometimes people combine them both, and then they really have bad shots because they'll hit a top it every once in a while and all that stuff. So that's one thing we're going to clean up. Hit some punch shots where you stop the momentum of the club past impact and check your lead wrist. Just keep that lead wrist flat through the impact zone. Your left forearm can rotate, and your hands can rotate. You just can't do this. That'll make the ball go to the right. Right. And you've read enough to know what's going on there. So, let me just check your head position relative to its original position. What I'm checking to see is if you move past your original spot. Yeah, you get ahead of it a little bit. You see how your head's a little forward. Okay, so in biomechanically, you want to have more tilt. You got a little bit of lateral movement. So I want you to work on your impact position, trying to create a little more bend in your upper body. None of this I want you thinking about on the golf course. I want you to do it repetitions where you're feeling like you're getting your right shoulder down, left shoulder up. And I have biofeedback. So what I'll do is I'll put you on the biofeedback, and you'll hear an auditory tone when you get in the right position, and you'll be able to imprint that. Yeah. So, for me, there's two phases to this. I mean, there's a phase where you got to understand, then you have to know you're doing it right or wrong, and that's when you start to feel the difference between what you're doing and what you want to be doing. And then you got to get to the level where you don't have to think about it. Well, that's a process. So, from the face-on view, you look good. From down the line, good setup. I made reference to what I thought was a little bit of weight toward the heels at address. How am I going to know? Well, that mat measures heel-toe weight distribution during the swing. It's called a pressure mat. But without using that, I'm just guessing right now. Good position at the top.
Too flat. It feels like that sometimes, and I intentionally, at one point, again, it's me,
right,
trying to make it more upright, it just felt flat.
No, I
that's all guessing.
Right. Yeah. So the way you would determine whether it's flat or upright is what is the plane of your swing. Well, you close the face a little bit on the backswing right here.
I tend to do that too. Very seldom do I slice the ball. If I do anything, it's going left.
Right. So your club path, and what I mean by the shaft of the club, when you get into this position where your left arm's parallel, the club shaft is a little bit upright, a little steep coming down. I would like to see that shaft flatten out on a shallower plane. Now, how we do that, we don't want to go inside. Notice your takeaway underneath the plane and shut a little bit. So you're manipulating the club with your hands. What I'd rather you do is take the golf club and stick it into your stomach and then just turn and don't move the angle in your front wrist and keep the relationship where the end of the golf club is pointing. It stays pointed in that position. So essentially, when you take the club back, the club head stays outside your hands a little more. It doesn't get inside your hands. Does that make sense?
Sure does. Because everything you're saying is spot on. When I start back, it's my hands first.
Right, and I think, so if you start with your hands, you're going to use your hands more than you want to use them. And that's where I think, some of the inconsistency is. If it's going left, you want to make sure that on the golf course, that if you start pulling the ball to the left, that in terms of transition sequence, you got to get your lower half to go a little first. It's a hard thing to think about while you're playing, but you have to know and sense what your body's doing. And if you feel like you're too fast, you already made reference to that. Yeah, usually the takeaway, if it gets too quick, you're going to be too quick in your swing.
First shot, if I'm hitting the ball as bad as I hit it, my first thought is slow down.
Right.
That'll start fixing it.
It will.
No, man,
Yeah. So,
hit the ball better than that, then I need to slow down.
Right. And so a better way to solve that problem would be, don't think about your hips, just do it with tempo. Just slow the pace of your arm swing down, then you'll coordinate your arm and body better. If your lower body is too slow, rather than think about your hips, just slow the takeaway down. If your lower body is too fast, then what you've got to do is feel like your arms are going to go a little faster. That's an easier way to fix it. If you're pulling the ball, you can move it back a little bit. I notice you do have the ball back, and that's probably you've probably developed that habit because of some other thing that you didn't like.
Again, everything that I've done has been because like everyone, I slice the ball.
Right. When you
I did everything to prevent that from happening.
right. And you don't slice. You got a little bit of it. Like I said, the swing's a little steep, but it's not an excessively bad over the top swing. So here's procedurally what I would say to you on procedure for aim and setup. While I told you to get your club and your grip right, and then your feet, the other way to think about it is bend from your hips, let your arms hang. Put your hands together, and then you should be able to take your right hand and touch your right knee. Everybody's build's different. Some people's shoulders are narrow, some are wide, some have long arms, some have long legs. I have short arms and short legs. I need more bend from my hips to get down there. So that's a good way to know how you're set up. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because sometimes I'll be in here and I wondered about that spacing, just not sure.
Right.
Sense.
Right. So.
Right here, I'm touching my thumb.
Right.
Here, I'm touching my knee.
Right.
Perfect.
Yeah. And so, most people have a tension problem. And what I mean by a tension problem is they have mental tension because they're scared to death they're going to hit a bad shot because they're intimidated by what they look at. And then they have a tension in their physiology. They squeeze it too tight. And then all these muscles get tense, and then they can't control the face because the tighter you hold it, centrifugal force, it's like batting or throwing. If your arm is tense, you can't release your arm, you can't throw. So when you swing, if you have a lot of tension in mental or physical, it's not a good thing. So, you got to be in touch with what your body's feeling. And I like to have a grip pressure that's light. It'll get faster as you swing faster because the club would fly out of your hand if it didn't. So I don't ever like to start with I'm always aware of the weight of the club. So on the golf course, I want to swing the club and sense the weight of it and feel the weight of it through my swing. There's no applied force. I'm not forcing the club. I'm letting the club swing. So when I hit a shot, before I have three waggles and 3 looks, but my intention there is to feel the club head and maintain a light feel and have a sense for that club head feel. That helps my tempo. Under pressure, your fastest component is your hands. This is a fast twitch muscle group, and when your hands take over, it's tension related, and it's going left. Oh, you mean that lead wrist? Yeah, that's okay. But the problem is when you take it back, you start to cock your wrist or bend your wrist right here. So the club gets inside a little too quick. See how you break your wrist right there?
Oh, that's a fact.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah, I think that if...
The moment I start, it's like right there.
Yeah, you don't need that.
Started turning.
Yeah. So, you got 2 phases to this. One, you just take the golf club and stick it here and turn. And then the next phase is just make sure that you put a club down at about 11 o'clock. So it's on your right toe at 11 o'clock. And then when you take the club back, make sure the shaft matches the club on the ground and they're parallel to one another. The key being the handle, the end of the club, and the club head are moving together, not the handle moves this way and the club head moves in. So if if you press forward, you're going to be inside.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, and what happens when that happens is the club gets shut, and then the natural chain of events, and this is just from experience watching people over the years, the more you go this way, the more you're going to go that way. Because your brain is like, I'm too far in, I need to go over that way, and you do it subconsciously. But yeah, I think that, if you could think of it the other way, right? If I said take it back straight, or feel like the club head's outside your hands, go ahead, set up. And then, on the downswing, I want the inverse of that. I want you to feel like the club is inside your hands coming down. Does that make sense?
So out here, it's swinging. It's really this.
Yeah, so it's almost going to feel like a loop to you, but it's really not. Yeah, so if you look at tour players, I'll just show you a couple, this guy's been on, he's played in Europe, but he's played in the States here. See how the club head stays outside his hands there? Outside meaning to the right of his hands, to our right. The club head never gets in here. That's what I mean by taking the club back on plane. This is a lady. So they're all doing that. On plane means specifically the angle of the shaft, the hands, the club head, stay on that shaft plane. And then she's going to trace that line coming down. A little out, but right there at the bottom, she starts, right there in the hitting zone, she's getting it there. So, yeah, I like your action. You get a good action, and I think you can be a good ball striker with just a little bit of adjustment. You don't need, major surgery. Paul Casey. But this is, I don't take a lot of comparisons that seriously, but one thing everybody can do is take it away right. We're not all professional athletes. We're not with a physio trainer, 2 hours a day, and we're not hitting balls for 8 hours or whatever. But you can get that part right.
What you said, I can practice that because I can see it and I can feel it. The club just.
So right here, King, watch this. The club head's outside his hands. Okay, now watch in the same place on the downswing where the hands are. They're inside his hands. So now the club's tracing the plane of the shaft, and there it is. All right.